market is the critical part. You can have the most beautiful property, but it's in the wrong market or it's not the right avatar. Like it's going to be very, very difficult to be successful. Jonathan, welcome from Colombia. When you were converting, it sounds like you started long-term rentals. Kind of where did you get to that and what drove the decision to change the strategy?
I think this is still a great strategy for people. This is a perfect one where I did this twice where...
From a property perspective, what are you looking for?
To your point on amenities, I realized we needed to keep doing things to have a competitive advantage in our market. That took priority.
The virtual assistant, tell us about that. I know that's something that you are spending more time on. Tell us a little bit like how you got the idea to build that business and where is that today?
As I was doing more of the real estate stuff, I would have them helping with other things like cold calling or deal analysis. Having that leverage enabled me to just do more things. Like, it's not about how many millions you want in the bank or what you want to do in revenue. It's literally just what do you want your life to be every day.
Hey everyone, welcome back to STR Like the Best. I'm your host, Michael Chang. I'm really excited for our podcast episode today. And, for those of you that are new to the show, I really focus on bringing short-term rental investors, operators, so you can hear their stories and hopefully take some of those lessons to build and improve your business. We're really focused on better investing both your time and your money. With that, I want to introduce Jonathan Farber to the show. Jonathan, welcome from Colombia.
What's going on, Mike? Happy to be here.
How's Medellin right now? It's very cold outside here in New York. I know you're a New Yorker too, so you've escaped down to warmer weather.
Yeah, it's a little cloudy here, but usually it's very warm here. Actually, there's no seasons. It's kind of a strange place in that sense, but it's usually like 75 to 80 degrees every day. A little bit of rain in the afternoons, but yeah, usually sunny and no humidity because it's at 6,000 feet elevation, so it's not too bad when it comes to that. But yeah, it's good.
Very cool, very cool. Well, glad you're enjoying the nice weather there, no humidity. Tell us, maybe just introduce yourself to the audience. Tell us kind of what you do and your short-term rental portfolio.
For sure. So, quick backstory on me. I went to Hofstra University in Long Island, grew up in New York. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I ended up going to the sales software company down in Raleigh, North Carolina. First time I left New York, so didn't really know what I was doing or getting into, but a lot of good stuff in the Carolinas. While I was there, I started investing in real estate. I fell into the bigger pockets, house hacking strategies, and I would just do 1 or 2 rentals a year with creative financing. I was living like a peasant. I was making decent money in sales as like a first year, but I was living so below my means. Every dollar I could, I was just reinvesting back into real estate or saving or education, one of the three. And just slowly it started to compound. I learned more about systems and processes and then maybe other ways to creatively finance deals, and then got into the world of short-term rentals kind of leading up to COVID. And I got my first short-term rental 6 months before COVID. And then I started converting the rest of my units. And now I have a mix of both. I have 16 units, 8 short-term rentals, and then 8 regular units. And that's what my portfolio looks like today. And I split time 6 months in New York, 6 months in Medellin, Colombia. I kind of work 6 months and then take 6 months off. Kind of a long story, but maybe we get into it. All good if we don't. And then now I have a business around bookkeeping for real estate investors and staffing virtual assistants for real estate investors. So that's it. Safer focus, 4-hour work week. That kind of explains maybe why I do what I do. But that's the long and short.
No, it's cool. It's cool. A lot of rich content, a lot of rich engagement content for us to mine. So I look forward to getting into it. I mean, I think the fact that your portfolio is based in the U.S. and you spend, I'm guessing, at least 181 days overseas to avoid the New York State taxes, that you can operate everything remotely, I think speaks to, one, the scalability, to how you can manage this business remotely. That's something that I focus very much on. I live in New York City, have 2 young kids, 3 and 1 years old. We have 39 units. And I actually just did all the annual reviews for my staff in the last 2 days. So it's been a lot of, I kind of felt like I was back in investment banking, but it's important to have a great team that's there to help you manage your business. So I definitely want to talk more about that and how you learn from you. How have you built your teams and building this business? Before we get there, though, let's talk about your real estate portfolio. So 16 units, 8 short-term, 8 long-term. Where are the 8 short-term rentals?
The Carolinas. near where I grew up, or not grew up, where I worked. Raleigh, Asheville, and Pinehurst.
Pinehurst. Okay. Was your inventory okay from the lead?
Luckily, the property was okay, but we had a lot of bookings that got canceled, which was very unfortunate. So lucky in one sense, unlucky in another, but net lucky.
Yeah. No one wants to go
Yeah.
to the insurance process. And then maybe talk about the long-term rentals. There's a lot of long-term rental investors here. As you were thinking about when you were converting, it sounds like you started long-term rentals, just creative financing. I'm assuming like sub two or owner, kind of some flavor of owner financing. Kind of where did you get to that, and what drove the decision to change the strategy or embrace a different strategy?
On the creative financing side, it's nothing too creative. I mean, but to people that don't know about these strategies, it is. But like low money down, live-in occupied loans, where you live in the property, you could put 0 down or 5% down or some low amount, and then buy more of those. Or second home loans, which are 10% down or were, and then even some investment loan options where you can put 10 or 15% down, which was interesting. So those type of things. I also did have some partnerships where I think this is still a great strategy for people, beginner types, or people that may have some experience, but they ran out of money and they have friends that have money, especially if your audience has corporate jobs. Like this is a perfect one where I did this twice, where I'd partner with someone. They would sort of be like in multifamily world, like the balance sheet partner. The loan would be in their name, and I would help with the deal finding or the management or other intangibles. But their main benefit that they were bringing to the deal was their lendability. If I was like tapped out on loans or my DTI was too high. So I did that. And then in both cases, I actually ended up buying those partners out. So that is another way. I mean, I'm not against partnerships, but for people that may be looking to use creative financing, I think that one is kind of underrated.
Yeah,
because you can keep going. You might have a partner, but there's strategic partners that bring different things to the table. And I actually think the worst partnerships, or I'm sure you hear it too, is like, yeah, my buddy, I sit next to him in the office, or my high school or college buddy. It's like, wait, why are you partnering? What are you bringing to the table? Are you bringing different skills or the same skills? Like, is this complementary or are you just redundant? And a lot of times that's like eye-opening for people. I had a partnership like that. Well, one of the two that was bought out, like it was just, we didn't like doing the same things and we liked doing the same things. So it was like, we were useless. So just learnings, but yeah. And then converting the properties. Yeah, I feel like once you first get that hit of short-term rental money or furnished rental money, it's, speaking of veins, I'm not a druggie, but it's, I guess the analogy is like it's a drug. The money is just so much better that it's
so much better.
kind of addicting. And there's a lot of other benefits to it that, there's, in most cases, a chance to be able to keep the property in better condition. You can screen your guests a little bit more efficiently than long-term rentals. So there's pros and cons. I'm not saying there's no drawbacks of furnishing short-term rentals, but I just started with one, and then I had the other units from those creative strategies that were long-term rentals. They just weren't making a lot of money, maybe a few $100s a month in cash flow, 400 or 500. And if I ran the numbers, the best case, worst case, and it seemed like there was a good chance it could make 2,000 a month in cash flow. It was worth that risk to me because I could always convert it back into a traditional rental. So yeah. And some of them are midterm rentals, actually. Like I have a 4-unit that 2 of the units are midterm and then 2 are traditional. So yeah, I mean, there's different ways to cut it. But for me, once I started, I just wanted to experiment with the other units and see if they would work and do the research. And I thought they could, and then I did. And, some of them worked out better than others, but still better than the traditional rentals. But again, they were area specific. That might not work for everyone in every market, but for me, it did, and it's what I still have now.
Yeah, that's great. Have you sold anything? Have you sold anything, or you're kind of buy and hold? You're a buy and hold kind of guy.
The only times I sell, I am a buy and hold guy. Like my goal would be hold forever, and you get the tax benefits and the net worth and all that. But the times I have sold were my earliest units that some people have different opinions on it. They were units in HOAs, and the HOAs just kept increasing the fees, and just that became difficult, and there wasn't enough spread, and I didn't think the units were going to appreciate. as much as a unit that wasn't in an HOA. So I've sold 2 units from that. But I'm pretty like firm believer that buy and hold. We were talking about this. Like I used to have a podcast. The biggest regret I would hear over and over from
Yeah.
investors was that they sold. So I didn't want to make that mistake. So I'm very reluctant to sell just because there's so many benefits to keeping.
Yeah, on the point, it's so much work actually to identify a market and a property, get it set up. There's actually a ton of some cost in there. And, not that there's anything wrong with flipping or, a free 1031. But generally speaking, I think if you do the work properly up front and it's a good market, it's a good property, whether it's short-term rental, mid-term rental, long-term rental, strategy that works, selling, it's at least 6%. Big that you're taking out because of the broker costs and then all the other closing fees, like, you're automatically going to lose 78% on a deal, on your way out, and your way in, you're probably like 3-4%. So there's like a 10% transaction cost. I think people forget when they see kind of the cool map online, no one ever factors in fees. There is a whole ecosystem of lawyers and brokers, and those people eat off your fees. So trust me, they're there. Even if, you don't see it on that pro forma, they're definitely there. And I think it's also like the tax benefits. If you, here in the US, if you have short-term rentals, you can avoid self-employment tax on that income. You can bonus depreciate on that income. It should generally appreciate with the new administration coming in. Trump was a huge proponent of bonus depreciation back in 2017 when he passed the TJCA Act. And, I think it's very likely that gets renewed in probably one of the first bills that passed Congress in January. He appointed a pretty gentleman's name, but he nominated a gentleman for Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. And this gentleman was instrumental in crafting and passing the opportunity zone legislation, which are folks on here. If you haven't looked into that, I recommend taking a look because I think it'll be another kind of really great opportunity to invest in real estate in a very tax efficient way, 2025, 2026. Effectively allows you to defer your capital gains into a property, and if you hold it for 5 or 7 to 10 years, you're not paying taxes on the appreciation. So it's probably the best real estate investment strategy, actually, in the way that it's set up. If you do it properly, there's very few things that beat a good OZ investment, opportunities in investment. SCRs, I think, are a close second, but opportunity zones, you need a lot. You need a lot more money, but that's going to be outside the scope. But for folks out there, like, that's something definitely I would be mindful of.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. If you can think about how you found this podcast, maybe it was on TikTok or Instagram, or maybe someone shared it with you. I don't run ads for the show or have any sponsorships. So the only way this grows is through word of mouth. If my podcast is valuable for you in any way, please hit the subscribe button and share this with someone who you think would help their investing journey or business. Thanks a lot, and let's continue on with the episode.
So let's talk about, like, me pick out a property. Like, what was the most profitable property? Like, blow us away with how smart you were, and how great a real estate investor you were during COVID, and regale us with some highlights. What's some deal highlights?
So I also, it's funny you say that. Like, in a good and bad way, I think COVID made so many people think they were smarter than they were. Like, to time something that was definitely a massive rising tide and get in, like, take action and do something, either buy a stock or start some type of business or buy a property. And I do think, though, that it really, in a bad way, set so many people up to think that, like, they're the second coming of Warren Buffett, when in fact, you could have been an idiot in a lot of cases. So this property, like, I go back and think of as that. Like, and at the time I thought I was smart, but now I realize, like, you would have been, like, anyone could have, in this specific instance, made money. But during COVID, I moved around a lot. I lived in a few different markets that I was going to prospect into. I still have my job at the time, actually. So I looked at COVID like an opportunity to sort of fast track my leaving my job. And that definitely turned out to be the case. So I was living in the Carolinas, and I was living in Louisville, Kentucky, back and forth, actually. But I ended up being in the Carolinas for a period of time in an area that I had spent a lot of time in before, Pinehurst, being that I'm a big I love golf and still play a lot in the summers. And Pinehurst is like a mecca for golf. And some people might, have tried this model, or it still definitely could be a model to work, which is there's a lot of famous golf courses in the country. Not all of them have adequate housing around them, but they have big demands as far as tourists and tournaments and events that bring people to the area. Even Pinehurst, they have the U.S. Open every 5 years, which is hundreds of thousands of people coming to a market, players, staff, media. So there's a few different factors that go into these markets. But basically, I was living in Raleigh, and like I'd spent a lot of time in Pinehurst, and I just started thinking, if people are coming here, it's getting more popular. And then when COVID hit, golf was one of the biggest things people were thinking about. Like everyone was obsessed with golf. You could socially distance and play golf. So I had been looking at some properties there, but then there was one that for some reason it looked like they priced it wrong. Like it was underpriced compared to what had happened over the last few months. And the property was listed for $275,000. And everything that I was calculating was showing that it would make at least $70,000 to $80,000 a year, at least in the COVID years. But after that, I looked at it like worst case would be in the 50s. So that ended up happening. I bought that property, got it set up. I did a lot of golf specific like features and amenities to it. Now it has a golf simulator. It has like a poker room. It's like a guys hang house. The guys come on golf trips, bachelor parties, families that come for tournaments. When the U.S. Open was there this past summer, some players stayed in there and some caddies. And it's right near the main famous number 2 golf course there. So that was kind of a home run. That's been, as strong a property as I have. I have one other property in Asheville that does very well. That property just does well for different reasons. But this one, just like the cash on cash, because I paid so little and it generates this much, it's definitely a sweeter deal.
What's the market value of that property? Like from a cost basis and a cash flow basis?
Yeah, the last time I looked, it was like right around 5.
Nice.
But here's the other thing that happened that made it like a home run is that Pinehurst actually was very concerning for a while. And I don't know how much, this comes up as a topic on the podcast, but Pinehurst had a huge like upheaval against short-term rentals and Airbnbs.
Yeah.
It's a very sleepy old town. So there was talk for a while that Airbnbs were just going to be flat banned in Pinehurst. And it went back and forth, and I was somewhat involved with it. And it came out in the end that they weren't going to ban the properties or new listings, but they were going to just grandfather the old ones, and then no new permits were going to be given. So it was a good deal, but then the fact that now it's sort of like shielded from competition, that is what makes it, really like the best one that I have. But I have 2 others in Pinehurst that I got still before the permitting process was like finalized. So they're good, but this one is the best.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it doesn't come up very often. I probably do an episode on it, but regulations can be very helpful, just depending on which side of the regulations that you're standing on. But congrats on a very successful property. It sounds like you have some strong competitive moats there that's going to protect you against oversupply. And that's, I think that brings up another great point about short-term rental investing. I think you brought this up earlier, just like the property and the market. And I can't emphasize it enough. Like a lot of my mentees that I work with to go buy properties and get the tax benefits, the thing that I would spend the most time with them is like the market, right? The market is the critical part. Like you can have the most beautiful property, but it's in the wrong market or it's not the right avatar. Like it's going to be very, very difficult to be successful. So, the right market that has the right supply and demand dynamics, the right regulations, and then the actual property, like now it's all about amenities, right? It really has, COVID, I would say 2020 to 2023, any normal house on any kind of normal property, you probably would do well. You could generate 20 to 25% cash on cash return. They're great returns because there's so much demand. There's so much pent-up demand for travel during COVID. And, obviously that demand has receded, right? Like the federal government just said that people are back in office 5 days a week. And also there's a lot more supply. I mean, we're, the capitalist society and people saw there was money to be made. And, they hire people like me to go help them and do that. And there's just a lot more good supply. So like, how do you differentiate yourself, right? I'm kind of curious on your thoughts there. For me, it's, we will want to look for houses that we can put like the 7 to 10 amenities that we think are the ones that are going to like really drive ROI. And there's some easy ones, right? Like, I won't give away all my secrets, but hot tub is easy. You gotta have hot tub. Sauna, someone's like, yeah, I'm sauna now. Like outdoor lighting, fire pit, mini golf. Not a golf simulator, but like an outdoor mini golf. Good lighting, like good seating, good lighting. So those are, there's a few other ones that kind of high ROI, but those are like the minimum. I think that's kind of the minimum viable product now. If you want a great property that's going to have longevity, what I mean by that is like, it doesn't do well for the first like 3-4 years, and you got to figure out what to do. It's actually going to carry you forward to the 10, 20, 30 year old period that is like we look to hold these properties. So I'm curious about how you, like, as you're looking at properties, I don't know if you're still kind of in growth mode right now, but as you're looking at properties, like, what are you, from a property perspective, what are you looking for?
To be honest, I haven't acquired anything in the last year. I've been growing a different business and focused more on improving my current stuff. So to your point on amenities, like, I realized we needed to keep doing things to have a competitive advantage in our market. So that took priority. Golf simulators are one that, like, in the golf areas, I'd say we needed. Like,
Yeah.
and they're not that expensive. They've come down a lot in price, so that made things a lot like easier. And also, I think there are some amenities that are like, they just look great in pictures, and they're not that expensive, but they just draw people in. And the simulator is one of them. The simulator, honestly, like, people think when you think simulator, it's like a $50,000 thing. For some people, if you just put a net and a mat in a garage, like, that can serve as something that would just get people a little more interested. Or a table with just like a poker top and chips. Of course, you could do these things high or low end, but it's just another thing that someone sending their group chat a link might be a little bit more interested in, or we could hang out and just, have more fun in. So those are like the main things. The Asheville property, I do want to like build out more of an outdoor space of like, probably, I think Jeremy Warden did this, like a chess board on the ground. I think that's kind of cool. It just looks cool. And then, yeah, like fire pit, like string lights. String lights aren't expensive, but they look cool in pictures.
They look really
people
cool
seem to really like them.
Yeah.
Another thing that's not expensive is like, and we put this in, is just a like a projector that someone could just project something onto the side of the house. Not expensive, but in pictures it looks amazing, and people just get excited about it. So those things. But as far as acquisitions, I could talk about like what I typically would look at as far as areas and stuff. But things have, I'm just going to call it as I've seen it. I think things have been harder the last year and a half for acquisitions, with rates, saturation, in some cases demand being down, prices of property still pretty high, and I was only doing purchase. So, for me, that was like an instruction to go look at my current inventory and see how I could just make it better instead of trying to buy more stuff.
Yeah, no, that I mean, squeezing more. I mean, it's investment. It's the same thing, right? We want to continue to get more cash flow, right? So if you just make your properties more efficient, all the better. I agree with you. It's, versus 2022, where, like you said, anyone can buy something and it would make money. We closed on our most expensive properties in Catskills in June, and it took 2 months we put a lot of capital in there to make it nice. And yeah, it took a long, and it deserved longer. It's gotta be nicer. The market really matters to make sure that, there's some either natural or artificial barriers to entry. Like, you gotta, and obviously there's regulation, and there's also price point. There's also like, what the guest wants, right? And can you provide that level of product to them? And that costs money. A lot of people don't have $100,000 to put into a property, $150,000 to put into a property that's over and above the mortgage, right? So I think those are the things that are now the differentiators. But 2025 is really going to be very different. I think, just given the change in administration with President Trump coming, and he is signaled very heavily. He is pro real estate growth, deregulation, lower rates, likely higher inflation. What came out yesterday with 25% tariffs. for Mexico and Canada. They don't, kind of do certain things that we want. So, you have a mix there of rising prices, inflation, probably better rates. And I kind of tell people that, I always tell people that real estate is beating inflation on easy mode. And it's hard to beat inflation. Inflation is it's not the 3 or 4% that gets reported in CPI. There's that inflation. All deficit spending is a form of taxation, right? And we have to fund that in some way. There are deficit spending, and that's that borrowing from the government and everyone else is just an inflation tax on all of us that we don't see. And it's really hard to keep up with inflation. If you can do it in a way where you get leverage, right? You're getting a 30-year mortgage at like a fixed rate that doesn't have any covenants, and you have a property that can cash flow for you, and you kind of just like roll that. I mean, that's a really, really easy way to, and then you have 16, or you have your portfolio. Just keep that, maintain it, make sure your insurance is paid every single all the premiums are paid. It's funny, so sometimes people forget to do that. I think there's so massive upside. And with the bonus depreciation now, if it goes back to 100% and rates, and we have a little bit more flexibility on mortgages, you can go back and buy houses for no money down again. You can have no money into a deal, buy houses again, which I think most people don't understand or appreciate, but they will. And there's a window right now between, now when the legislation gets passed. I think there's going to be some pretty good opportunity to. I think there's another leg up in real estate prices. We're not building enough, and there's inflation. Like, what happens? Prices go up. Let's talk about enough on my spiel on real estate pricing. I mean, we're definitely looking to buy. We're looking very heavily to grow the portfolio despite prices and everything you just talked about. I think there's still some really good opportunities there. The virtual assistant business. Tell us about that. I know that's something that you are spending more time on. And I don't like the word virtual assistants. Kind of a misnomer. They're very real. Definitely not virtual. And they're much more than assistants. They're the backbone of my operations. But tell us a little bit like how you got the idea to grow to build that business, and where is that today?
It first started actually with podcasting. So I mentioned once I was doing a podcast also, but I didn't know anything about podcasting, editing, reaching out to guests, researching what podcasts to target, things like that. So I was doing it and it was kind of crawling along, but it was a drudge. Like, I didn't enjoy the process at all, other than just the conversations. So I looked around with like different services and agencies, but they were so expensive or the quality just wasn't good. So first VA I ever hired was someone to just help with the podcast. And they were amazing. They were just hardworking and loyal and had experience. And they taught me a lot about the process also, but they would do all the video editing. They would do outreach to get guests. They would do the scheduling. If someone canceled, they would reschedule. Like, it was just a very easy, clean process, which I realized after is actually, I got very lucky just because I had no idea what I was doing and kind of stumbled into an amazing person. And since then, before I got better at like screening and finding good people, there have been tons of horrible people just because I didn't know what I was doing. And I say that because, like, I talk to a lot of people now that they will bring on a virtual assistant of some type to help with tasks, and they're like, oh, that person sucked. And then we dig into it and it's like, I think the process they walked into kind of sucked, or the training sucked, or like the business wasn't prepared for it. So I think there's like both sides of it. But anyway, it started with podcasting. And then as I was doing more of the real estate stuff, I would have them helping with other things like cold calling or deal analysis or sending out a newsletter and then other types of content. And then this was kind of a funny, unexpected byproduct, but in my actual job, my W-2, I would use a virtual assistant to help me with things also, which I wouldn't give like sensitive information or like access to certain tools. But if I needed research done in my job, I was doing sales, they would do the research. They would look up like the LinkedIn company reports and the new hires. Like, I tell people in their W-2 also, there's definitely room for just getting help, or the things you don't want to do can make you look really good. Building slide decks, for example. I hate building slide decks. It's like my least favorite activity. Okay, so just outsource it. So it started to progress and snowball. And then, ultimately, as I scaled my portfolio, management was like the thing I heard most people complain about. It was the thing that I didn't like doing. Like I hated being on at all times and just being glued to my phone. So that was like, I would say, the biggest lever of just having someone that would be on call 24/7 and answering guest messages, vendor claims, insurance, improving the listings, dealing with like vendors, and just overseeing things. I could always be there as like a second layer of defense, but having that leverage enabled me to just do more things that I got into real estate for. Like a lot of people, they leave their job to start a business or a real estate business, and like it's 10 times harder. I wasn't trying to replace my job with another job that I hated. So, I backed into everything from this exercise. Maybe we link it after. It's this Frank Kern perfect day exercise. I did this years ago. And basically, you just draw out, like, what do you want your average perfect day to be? It's not about how many millions you want in the bank or, like what you want to do in revenue. It's literally just, what do you want your life to be every day? Who do you want to talk to? Who do you want to not talk to? Like for me, I have my phone is on D&D 24/7. Like I haven't picked up a phone call in 5 years because I hate phone calls. I don't know when they're going to end. I don't know who's calling me. Like I just didn't want to be tied to anything. So that was all part of that. And I just kept trying to peel back layers to see how that was possible. And, a lot of trial and error and failing and systems and building. But, ultimately it is possible. If you look at big companies, the owners and the CEOs, they're not the people on customer support phone calls, or they're not the one doing their P&Ls and bookkeeping and inventory. They have other people who might like doing that thing more than them and are probably better than them at doing that thing. That was like another big unlock for me of just, I thought delegating was, I'm giving some crappy task to someone who's also going to think it's a crappy task. But a lot of times that crappy task to me is something that this person genuinely loves and they actually get excited about. Whereas for me, I genuinely hate it. So it just snowballed. And now that's, my team is running the properties, virtual, they're all in the Philippines. My executive assistant, my copywriters, those sorts of things, they're all outsourced tasks, and it has some drawbacks. But in general, I think for a lot of people, it could be very helpful.
No, I think you could unlock something there with using virtual assistants or using assistants at your 9 to 5. Hugely helpful. When I was in investment banking, had I known about this, I would have been even more efficient. I think in the Airbnb business, it's pretty well understood. I want to be in the state where my phone's on D&D. I do not disturb. I never get any calls. I don't have any alerts on my phone. The team handles everything. I had looked at Jeff Bezos actually was the framework that I aligned with, was pushing decision making down as far down the organization as possible. And what I mean by that is I'm not going to have the best information, generally speaking, on 95% of the things that come up during the day there. Whether it's a guest issue, a maintenance issue, whatever it is, it's actually the person on the ground that actually has a much better sense of what's going on. So I need to train that person and empower that person so they can make that decision there without it coming to me. Like problems that come to me should only be things that everyone in the company can't solve, and we know how to process that. So and kind of managing by exception, right? That exception comes up, then okay, well, what happened here? Let's build something that future problems can be solved by a process. It is actually, when you brought up the work part, a lot of people do that now. I think particularly on the programming side, they kind of hire less expensive developers in Eastern Europe or wherever to do a lot of the work for them. What I think actually is a big market is for an executive assistant. I'm actually looking for that now too. Like someone to actually just like run the day-to-day of your life, like actually like an EA. If you're a busy professional, the bills, shopping list, the scheduling for, your kids drop-offs and birthday parties. Like my wife spent an hour yesterday, like getting the goodie bags for my kids, their birthday party. But she enjoyed it. So it's fine. But, there's a lot of like more mundane things. Like my bookkeeper actually runs she did this bookkeeping for our entire company, and myself personally, she kind of just does everything. And it's really super hard. It really opens up your time. And I think this is like maybe what we're both kind of aligned with is like kind of the life that you want. I think for me, it's like similar to that, but it's just like, I want as much free time in the day as I can possibly have. And to do what I want to do versus being like, my day is just full of calls and things I have to do. I want to do things that I want to do. Like, we wanted to do a podcast yesterday. So we're like, let's do a podcast today. We both have crafted lives and allowed us to do that. And then, I think to your point about crafting the perfect life, that for me is the perfect life. It's like, I wake up and there's nothing on my calendar. Like, I sell my businesses, my investments, but there's just nothing on my calendar. Like, I can just, the thing that I need to do is like get up and like what I enjoy doing, take my kids breakfast, take them to school, play with them, drop them off, pick them up. Like, that's fun for me. But during the day, it's like minimizing the things I have to do and maximizing the things that I want to do, that I think I'm good at, that I can maximize my happiness and my productivity. Maybe the Frank Kern framework is similar, but that's a mindset I've had for a very, very long time, which is why I didn't love investment banking, because literally your schedule from Sunday from 6 a.m. to 12 the midnight is packed full of stuff. Too hard.
Totally.
Too hard.
Yeah. I mean, something on that I think everyone listening right now think about. I was on a mastermind call last night with guys that have big businesses, and we're going around the table. All right, everyone's doing their 2025 goals, and people were throwing goals out. And my friend who runs the group would ask every person that said the number, all right, what is achieving that going to do for you that you can't do now? And some of these guys, I think they were setting some vanity metrics, but I think it's great so I say that because everyone struggles with it. I think it is good to have a North Star goal, but I think once you back into why you want the goal that you want, things are a lot more fun. And also you have a vision of achieving it. So, for me, I know what my monthly number is, that if I have that number, it would be hard for me to spend more than it. So I would never kill myself to try to get above that number. I have no aspirations to be Grant Cardone or, like a big name person. I don't even want to be recognized on the street. I know it sometimes might happen as a byproduct of content, but I think for a lot of people, if you come up with a goal of, all right, my financial freedom number is actually X, or to join this country club and play 50 rounds of golf a year, it's actually X, then it's okay, I can change what I'm doing to stencil up against that, but I don't need to do all these other things. And I can set my goals and activity a lot more clean, against that, and it's easy in real estate, I think, sometimes to get away from that, but also it's easy to back into goals that way of okay, if this property pencils to generate $2,000 a month, $4,000 a month, whatever, how many of those do I need to be financially free? And then just back into it that way. And then there's a really clear plan to get it. Or, how many co-hosting clients do I need? Or how much do I need to optimize my property to do this? So I don't even remember the original part of the question, but just talking about that, I think that's so important. And you just reminded me of it last night, that we get away from that. But if you have that as your North Star, I have that pinned on my desktop. The only reason I'm here to make money and hustle is so I can play the best tournament golf possible over the summer. But there's a lot of costs in that. Equipment, coaches, country clubs, caddies, hotels. So, for me, that's my North Star. I mean, I have a girlfriend, I don't have a family yet. Those things will develop. But, I think it's good for people to stay in touch with that specific reason.
No, agreed. No, I think that's probably why we, been kind of nice to talk with each other. I think kind of a similar worldview on the purpose of our respective businesses that we're both building. I think it's really important to have a goal, and the issue with that sometimes is goalposts move. You get there, and then what's next? You see someone else doing better, and then you're well, why can't I'm just this person? Why can't I do that? I think that's why I think it's really important to write it down. We do that every single year. My wife and I do. We have our annual planning together. We'll write down the spreadsheet, what we said the year before, and write down, it's something crazy, just notes on a Google sheet, and it just every month, 1 to 10, and just write down what our goals are. It's good, I think it's good to write it down, because it's very real there. You just see it, just having having your desktop, you see it every single day. It's important to you, right? You see something every single day, it reminds you, it orients you when you have a bad day or things aren't going right, or you kind of get off the rails a little bit. It's hey, okay, I want to be a really good golfer, right? Is expanding into, is making AI software, software is going to get me there, right? Is then, I think it's a good way to work here. So as we went on a conversation, I kind of asked this question to all of my guests, and it's very reflective. I'll give you a second to kind of think about it after I ask it. The business is a team sport, and we wouldn't be where we are today without friends, families, colleagues, people around us that have supported us along that journey. Like, who's the one person that, was particularly kind to you in your journey that's got you to where you are today?
That's a good question. The first person that comes to mind, I don't know just how my mind works. It's the person that first helped me find the first step to real estate. But like, there were other people that helped me more along the way, might have taken my phone calls, answered questions, but it was my friend Chris who was the first person that said, you should check out Bigger Pockets. And then we would just riff on ideas. But like, he was one of my best friends and kind to me, but I don't even know. I guess I probably would have stumbled into it at some point. Maybe. We'll never know. But he like directly told me to think about real estate and investing. And, it was like when you're in that phase after you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it's like, am I going to do laundromats? Am I going to do ATMs? Am I going to, what other strange business? But he was the one that was like, hey, real estate is probably the best. Look at all of the rich people that have real estate. So, I'll say my buddy Chris.
All right. Well, shout out to Chris. Got you to 181 plus days in Medellin, so you can go and be a great golfer. Hey, Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us today. It's really great to talk about the journey. I think you bring a very different perspective to the Airbnb business, to outsourcing, how you live your life. And for folks that want to reach out to you and ask you questions about your journey or maybe your virtual assistant business, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Probably Instagram, just because it's easy and a lot of people are on it. Just JONJFARBER. But if you Google me, or I could give you my email as well. I'll give him a personal email. It's no problem. It's managed by a VA, but it's on my email. But I see any inquiry, any question, like I'll personally help or answer any question that someone has. But yeah, Instagram or email is just easy. It'll get to me. And if you have questions or need help with virtual assistants, bookkeeping, we have really low cost solutions for any of those. And also just happy to give free advice and help. And I know what it's like when you're kind of drowning and don't have any help. So any of those are good.
Perfect. All right. Well, I'll link your Instagram handle to the show notes. So folks, if you have any questions on this, please reach out to Jonathan. It could be a great resource to, especially bookkeeping. Folks, I know your books are, I've seen a lot of books from my students and people that want to join the community, and they're a mess. So first thing I tell people to do is like, get your books in order so you're ready for tax time. So you actually know if you're making money or not. Because most of the time, you don't know if you're actually making money unless you have proper bookkeeping. So managing your real estate portfolio by how much money is in your bank account at the end of the month is not the way. It's not the path to success. I will tell you that 100%.
Just like missing out on deductions is the craziest thing to me. Like I got a check for $26,000 from tax returns that were 2 years old because I was missing deductions and expenses. It's just like, no one should have that. So yeah, crazy.
All right, I'll reach out to Jonathan if your books need cleaning and you need some BA help. Definitely reach out to Jonathan. Jonathan, thanks again. Appreciate it.
You got it, Mike. Thank you.
If you found this episode valuable, please make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can get notified when I put out new content on Airbnb investing. And if you want to learn about how to work with me more directly, I have links below on my description. Click on those and let's figure out how I can help you with your Airbnb investing journey.